Hello, welcome back to the videos. We're in a new series I'm calling Chord Groupings, and this is the third video. And what we're doing is using the three chord shapes that we're all familiar with, the F, the D, and the bar, and we're trying to build a group of associated chords. In other words, the chords that you're using all the time to play backup and rhythm and even in your solos, all the commonly heard chords in the key that you're playing in, and locate them all in one group. So each time we pick a shape, we designate that as the key or the root chord, and we're trying to find the chords nearby. Sometimes they're physically linked by the notes they contain, and sometimes they're just located nearby, not physically linked but nearby each other in a group. So we have so far from the previous videos the 1, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7. So we're only missing the 2 and the 3. And let me make this statement again. The theory part is not nearly as important as knowing where these shapes are and being able to physically link them together close by each other on the fingerboard. So if you don't know the natural number system, you don't understand what a scale is, all the theory stuff that I'm using is mainly for reference points for those who do understand it. But if you don't, as long as you can look on the fingerboard, listen with your ear, and hear the changes and associate these groups of chords with the chords that you've been hearing, that's the goal. The theory stuff can come later, and actually theory will be built into all this. If you're doing the chord changes right and you're using the right shapes at the right time for the right length of time, theory says you're already doing something right. So just thought I'd throw that out. So let's add the 2 and the 3 chord to each one of our three groups. I'm going to give you a zoom of the fingerboard and try to stay kind of centered in the picture there. There we go. So let's use the F shape as the first group that we examine. We know that's the 1, we know that's the 4, that's the 5, the 6 is built into 1, and the 7 is not natural to the key of G, in this case F, but it's, you know, not too far away. It's always a whole step below the 1 chord. So let's add the 2. The 2 would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F, which is altered. The second note of the G scale is A, and it's generally speaking referred to as a minor chord. Not always, but generally speaking. So we might have a song that goes from G to A minor at some point. How do we physically link or find an A minor chord nearby? Well, if I use these two notes and I build a bar chord off that and then add the first and fourth strings 2 frets higher, I could go from a G to an A minor like this. So these two notes are my reference point. Even though they're being canceled out when I do this, they do kind of physically tie the two positions together. And again, since we're bluegrass players, we don't always need the full shape. So I could eliminate the 4th string and just hold these bottom 3, and I have A minor. If I want to include the bass, I have to figure out a way to finger that note. But just to make it easier, let's just hold it like this. But you can physically link them together by the 5th fret being the location of your bar chord. So I can go from G to A minor, which is a pretty common change in lots of music. Even bluegrass songs occasionally do that change. What about the 3 chord? G, A, B, C, D, E, F, which is altered. A, B, G, A, B. B, the 3 chord, is usually minor. Not always, but usually minor. How would I locate a B minor in reference to this F shape and keep it nearby? Ooh, watch this. I can actually move the first string note back 1 fret. I'm going to use another finger to do this because I'm not going to play the bass string in this example. I have a 3 chord built into my 1. The 1 and the 6 are built into each other, and the 1 and the 3 are built into each other in this grouping. So there's my B minor. So we have all 7 of the commonly occurring changes. The only oddball is the F. We know that the F chord is not natural to the key of G, but it's used a lot and it's not too far away. So let's go through all 7 of the chords that we've discovered that you're going to be using and reference them all in a group around this shape. So here's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the 1. Now, if I just roll over these changes or kind of play around with them with the right hand, doing different patterns, it will sound like a lot of songs that you've heard. Bits and pieces of songs will start coming to your mind, and it'll actually sound like a song in itself, because we're just taking G scale notes and harmonizing them, or in other words, we're building the notes of the G scale into chords. So the notes that you're using to play melodies and licks in the key of G, those G scale notes have been shuffled up into chords. So it's only natural that they're going to sound good in the key of G, because they're G scale notes turned into chords. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So if I just play those 7 common changes, they sound like music instantly, you know. So you're using these shapes all the time, but instead of, like we talked about earlier, jumping all over the neck and finding them in these diverse locations, you can locate them all in one group. Now, let's move to the next group, which is the D-shaped group. So we have already discovered from the previous video that there's the 1, there's the 4, there's the 5, the 6 is built in, and the 7 would be a whole step below that. So we need to plug in the A minor and the B minor, or the 2 and the 3 chords in these groups. Now remember, they're either physically linked or they're nearby in a group. The A minor in this case will not be physically linked by any of these notes. None of these notes will be in the A minor chord, but they're going to be really close by this position. Move the first string up 1 fret, move the second string up 2 frets, move the third string up note up 2 frets. So 1 fret on the first, 2 frets on the second, 3 frets, 2 frets on the third. I'll get this right in a minute. So even though they're not physically linked together, they're really close by each other. So first string up 1, second string up 2, third string up 2, and you can find that A minor chord in this group. It would look like this. And again, I'm eliminating the 4th, but if you want to add the 4th, you'll have to find a way to finger that. I'm just going to do the little 3-note version. So here's 1, here's 2, which is A minor in this group. Where would B minor be? B minor and G are the 1 and the 3, regardless of the key, regardless of the group, physically will be built inside each other. If I move the second string note back 1 fret and use my index finger to flatten that out, guess what? There's my 3 chord built into my 1. So there's 1, there's 3. So just like G down here was built into B minor and vice versa, when I go up here, here's G, B minor, G, B minor, G, B minor. So I'm moving the second string back 1 fret and keeping the other notes the same. So this looks exactly like this position, but it's actually B minor. So now we have all 7 common changes in this group. Let me go through them. Here's 1, 2, the short form, 3, or the short form of that, 4, 5, 6, which is built into the 1, 7, which is a whole step below the 1. So again, I just strung those together in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but you start to hear how they sound like songs. So if I just kind of go through them, I can mix the order up. It starts to sound like the music that you're used to hearing on the banjo, because you're using these chord shapes all the time to play licks, roll, vamp. You're using partials to play partial position licks. You're using full shapes to find melody. You're using chords all the time. So instead of, again, going up and down the neck, jumping around, using the same shape every time to find the chord you need, you can locate them all around an axis of saying the D shape is my group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now let's move to the bar chord. That's the next shape. That's the only group left. So let me see if I can stay in the camera shot here. So we have, here's our 1 chord, which we're calling the bar. I think I need to move the camera up a little more. There we go. So there's the 1. And I could actually go this way also. There we go. There's the 1. We know the 4 from our previous video was this. The 5 was on top of the 1. We knew the 6 was here, or the full version, and then the 7 was a whole step behind the 1. So let's add the 2 and the 3 to this group. Alright, to find the 2, what we'll do is we'll raise the first string up 2, raise the second string up 1, and raise the third string up 2. So again, even though this 2 chord is not physically linked by notes, it is physically nearby the bar chord. So I'm going to go up 2 frets on the first, 1 fret on the second, and 2 frets on the third, which would put me at 14, 13, and 14. So I'll figure out what fingers I want to use for that. So I can go from 1 to 2, A minor, G to A minor, just like this. And again, I'm omitting the 4 string. If I wanted the 4 string, I'd have to add another finger and reconstruct my shape. So I'm just going to use the easy version. 1, 2. Now what about the 3? Remember before we talked about that each other group that we talked about, the 1 and the 3 were like physically linked. They're built inside of each other. If I move the second string note back, the third string note back 1 fret out of this bar chord shape, that gives me my 3. So the bar, G, and the 3, which is B minor, is only 1 note away. Again, I'm going to omit the 4th, but if I did want to play the 4th, I'd have to find a way to play it. So let's just play the easy version. So now I can find all 7 of those common changes using this as my grouping of chords. Stay in one spot on the fingerboard. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. And again, you remember all the groups repeat. So if you went up the neck and started your G groups again, that would be 1, then the 2 would be here, your 3 would be here, 4 would be here, 5 would be here, 6 would be here, 7, back to 1. And then you have another G grouping that goes up the neck further using the D shape. So you're basically using the same groups over and over and over to play in these common key changes. Now, this is universal to any key. No capo needed. You don't even need to know the theory of this, because remember, we're talking about associating shapes physically by linking notes together, or they're just nearby each other on the fingerboard. Trying to locate them in a central location, picking one of the shapes that you know, the F, the D, and the bar, building a little group of buddies, if you want to call it that, chords that sound good together that you're using all the time for all these things when you play the banjo. If you want to try to learn the theory aspect of the number system and what a scale is, that's great, but you don't need to know that to use these chords. If you're using them correctly and they sound right, then you're doing it right. Theory says you're doing something right. So add these 2 chords to the 3 groups, and what we're going to talk about next time is some more substitutions. And by that I mean, what would happen if a chord appears in this group that's not being explained by the scale or the key you're playing in? So what if I'm playing in the key of G and there's a chord that appears like that F that doesn't fit into the scale? How do I locate those oddball chords, I'll call it, in my group? And they're actually a lot easier than you think. So we'll add some of those outsider chords, if you want to call it that, to our chord groupings next time. But try vamping and rolling over these chord shapes. The backup licks that you know that are based on shapes can be played in groups too. So we'll probably conclude the video series with some examples of how to play inside a chord group, and take a break inside of a group or play backup. We'll finish with that. But next video we'll look at some of those outsider chords or some odd chord changes that may occur, but they'll still be located within a group. So I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Thanks.